The first security guard grabbed the single father's arm just as his son stepped onto the graduation stage. The second guard pointed toward the exit and ordered him to leave immediately. Hundreds of people watched. Some whispered. Others stared. The father looked around in confusion, his eyes filling with embarrassment as his son stood frozen on stage, diploma only seconds away from being placed into his hands. Then something happened that nobody in that auditorium could have predicted. 10 Navy SEALs rose from their seats at the same time. And within moments, the entire room fell silent. Before we begin, if you believe kindness matters more than appearances, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that dignity and respect can change lives. Michael Dawson never imagined that attending his son's graduation would become one of the most painful moments of his life. For 18 years, he had done everything alone. When his wife passed away from cancer shortly after their son Ethan's first birthday, Michael suddenly found himself facing a future he never expected. He was just 26 years old, grieving the love of his life while trying to learn how to raise a baby. The years that followed were not easy. Money was always tight. Sleep was rare. The responsibilities never ended. Michael worked long shifts repairing fishing boats near the harbor during the day and often picked up extra jobs at night cleaning warehouses. His hands became rough from years of labor. His back constantly ached. But every sacrifice had one purpose. Ethan. Every school project. Every soccer game. Every birthday. Every moment. Michael was there. Sometimes exhausted. Sometimes worried. But always present. He missed meals so Ethan could eat. He delayed medical treatments because school supplies came first. He wore the same worn-out jacket for nearly 10 years because Ethan needed new clothes more than he did. To the outside world, Michael looked like an ordinary working-class father. To Ethan, he was a hero. As graduation approached, Ethan earned admission into one of the country's top engineering universities. Teachers praised him. Friends admired him. Neighbors celebrated him. And throughout every achievement, Ethan always credited his father. People often told Michael how proud he should be. The truth was, pride didn't even begin to describe what he felt. For years he had worried whether he was doing enough. Whether he was failing as both father and mother. Whether Ethan secretly felt cheated growing up without the life other children had. Now, seeing his son prepare for college, Michael finally allowed himself to believe that maybe he had done something right. Graduation day arrived on a bright spring morning. Michael woke before sunrise. He carefully ironed his best shirt. Though it was old and slightly faded, he wanted to look respectable. He polished his shoes, trimmed his beard, and placed a small photograph of Ethan's mother into his pocket. She should have been there. He wished more than anything that she could witness the moment they had both dreamed about. When he arrived at the prestigious private academy where Ethan attended on scholarship, he immediately noticed how different he looked from many of the other parents. Luxury vehicles filled the parking lot. Expensive suits and designer dresses surrounded him. Business executives. Doctors. Lawyers. Successful people discussing investments and vacations. Michael felt slightly out of place. But that didn't matter. He wasn't there for them. He was there for Ethan. The ceremony began. Students marched into the auditorium. Families applauded proudly. Michael's heart swelled when he spotted Ethan among the graduates. For a brief moment, every hardship from the past 18 years seemed worth it. Then everything changed. About halfway through the ceremony, 2 security guards approached Michael's row. At first, he assumed they were assisting another guest. Instead, they stopped directly beside him. One leaned down and quietly asked for identification. Michael complied immediately. The guard examined it briefly. His expression changed. Then he requested that Michael step outside. Confused but cooperative, Michael followed. Once in the hallway, the guards informed him that there had been concerns regarding unauthorized attendance and that his presence required verification. Michael tried explaining that he was Ethan's father. That his invitation was legitimate. That he had every right to be there. But the situation only became more uncomfortable. Several staff members gathered nearby. People began staring. Whispers spread. Someone apparently believed Michael looked suspicious. Perhaps it was his worn clothing. Perhaps it was the calloused hands. Perhaps it was simple prejudice. Whatever the reason, assumptions had already been made. The guards eventually instructed him to leave the building until the matter could be resolved. For a few seconds, Michael couldn't speak. All he could think about was Ethan. His son was about to receive his diploma. The moment they had worked toward for nearly 2 decades. And now he was being escorted away. Humiliation washed over him. Not because strangers questioned him. But because Ethan might see it happen. Back inside the auditorium, Ethan noticed movement near the entrance. His smile disappeared. He saw his father being led away. The man who had sacrificed everything for him. The man who never missed a single important day. The man who taught him courage. And now that man stood alone, being treated like he didn't belong. Ethan's face turned pale. The audience remained largely unaware of what was happening. Most continued watching the ceremony. Most. But not everyone. Near the back rows sat 10 men dressed in formal civilian clothing. At first glance, they appeared to be ordinary guests. They were anything but ordinary. Years earlier, Michael had served in the Navy. Though he rarely spoke about it, he had spent several years supporting special operations units as a mechanical specialist responsible for maintaining mission-critical equipment. He wasn't a combat hero. He never sought recognition. Yet during his service, he had formed friendships that lasted a lifetime. Several of those friends had gone on to become Navy SEALs. When Michael's wife died, those men helped him survive the darkest chapter of his life. When money was short, they quietly assisted. When grief threatened to overwhelm him, they answered phone calls at midnight. When Ethan needed positive role models, they showed up. Over the years, the friendships remained strong. Without Michael's knowledge, Ethan had invited them to graduation. He wanted them present because they represented a hidden part of his father's story. A story of service, loyalty, and sacrifice. The moment the SEALs noticed Michael being removed, they understood something was wrong. One stood. Then another. Then another. Until all 10 men were on their feet. The movement immediately attracted attention. People turned to look. The atmosphere shifted. These men carried themselves with quiet confidence. Years of discipline and leadership radiated from them. They walked calmly toward the entrance where Michael stood. No shouting. No threats. No drama. Just purpose. When they reached the hallway, one of the men spoke with school administrators. Another verified Michael's invitation. A third contacted individuals connected to the school's board. The truth emerged within minutes. A misunderstanding fueled by assumptions. Nothing more. Yet the damage had already been done. Michael remained standing silently, clearly uncomfortable. Then one of the former SEALs placed a hand on his shoulder. The simple gesture communicated something powerful. Respect. Brotherhood. Support. Soon afterward, the group escorted Michael back into the auditorium. This time, something remarkable happened. As he entered, people began realizing who he was. They learned about the years of sacrifice. The single parent who worked endless jobs. The veteran who never sought attention. The father who dedicated his life to his son. The room grew quiet. The whispers stopped. And then, from somewhere near the front, a person started clapping. Another joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium rose to its feet. A standing ovation thundered through the building. Not for a celebrity. Not for a wealthy donor. Not for someone famous. For a father. Michael froze. He looked around in disbelief. Tears filled his eyes. For years, he had carried burdens alone. For years, he had wondered whether anyone truly understood the sacrifices hidden behind ordinary days. Now hundreds of strangers were acknowledging something he never expected. His worth. On stage, Ethan openly cried. The principal paused the ceremony. The applause continued. Many parents wiped away tears. Even some staff members became emotional. Because in that moment, everyone recognized a universal truth. The strongest people are often the ones nobody notices. The people quietly carrying responsibilities. Quietly making sacrifices. Quietly loving others without asking for recognition. When the applause finally subsided, Michael returned to his seat. This time, the 10 former Navy SEALs sat beside him. Not as heroes. Not as protectors. But as friends. As brothers. As men honoring someone they deeply respected. A few minutes later, Ethan's name was called. He walked across the stage. Accepted his diploma. And before returning to his seat, he glanced toward his father. Their eyes met. No words were necessary. Everything they needed to say existed within that look. The years of struggle. The sacrifices. The victories. The love. After the ceremony ended, families gathered outside beneath the afternoon sun. Photographs were taken. Graduates celebrated. Laughter filled the air. Michael stood with Ethan near the campus entrance. The principal approached and personally apologized for what had happened. Michael accepted graciously. He held no anger. Life had taught him that mistakes happen. What mattered was how people responded afterward. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Ethan handed his father a framed letter. Inside was a scholarship acceptance announcement along with a handwritten note. The note explained that every success Ethan achieved belonged as much to his father as it did to him. It described the countless sacrifices Michael thought nobody noticed. The nights he worked extra hours. The meals he skipped. The dreams he postponed. The love he never stopped giving. By the time Michael finished reading, tears streamed freely down his face. For the first time in many years, he allowed himself to cry openly. Not from pain. Not from exhaustion. But from gratitude. Before this story ends, we have a special request. Please comment below with the words, "Real heroes never give up." Let's honor every parent, guardian, mentor, or caregiver who sacrificed quietly so someone else could have a better future. Years later, Ethan would graduate from university with honors. He would build a successful engineering career. He would eventually become a father himself. And whenever people asked him about success, he always shared the same lesson. Titles fade. Money comes and goes. Recognition is temporary. But love, sacrifice, and character create legacies that last forever. The memory that stayed with him wasn't receiving the diploma. It wasn't the applause. It wasn't even the standing ovation. It was seeing his father walk back into that auditorium with his head held high. Because that day proved something important. A person's value is not determined by their clothing, income, or appearance. True worth is measured by the lives they uplift, the sacrifices they make, and the love they leave behind. And sometimes, when the world fails to recognize that value, extraordinary people rise to remind everyone what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with your friends and family, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that inspire kindness, courage, and hope. Because somewhere today, another parent is making sacrifices nobody sees. And they deserve to know that their love matters more than they could ever imagine.